Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our NAV Barcoding Mobile Warehouse Management System and Production Labor Tracking webinar. My name is Michael Introvertolo, and I am the Accounts and Marketing Manager over here at Solution Systems. If you take a quick look at the bottom of the screen, you will see our Twitter handle, which is @solution_system. I'll be posting updates throughout the rest of the day with regards to this webinar. So if you like to tweet, you can always send us your comments and questions through Twitter, or you can send them the conventional way by, through email or phone call or whatnot. Today we're very fortunate to have Mark Hamlin with us. Mark is the president at DMS Insight Works, and he's going to be conducting this, which should be a great overview. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to Mark, and he can get started.
Sounds good. Thank you, Michael. Do you see this PowerPoint?
I do. You're good to go.
Awesome. Excellent. So, good afternoon, everyone. What we'll be doing today is just running through a little bit of background on what to expect if you're, looking at implementing a barcoding project. And so, 5-10 minute PowerPoint session, and then we'll jump directly into a software demo so you can actually see what the system would look like if you're implementing tools like ours for your shop floor or your warehouse. Okay, so let's jump right in. So the products that we provide that we'll be going over today are primarily the three that are shown there: the physical inventory module, which works with or without scanners. So, I mean, today we're talking about barcoding. But if you do have physical inventory issues and you're not ready to jump into, barcoding with 2 feet, that physical inventory module for cycle counting and full physical inventory counts is really a must-have. Everybody needs it if you're carrying any sort of inventory. The mobile inventory management, that's the barcoding for WMS and production. And we'll be going through a presentation of that in a bit. And shop floor data collection, which is more for manufacturing. So that's capturing any information related to activities on your shop floor. Most of the products have support for NAV4 and up. Anything that's 2013 and greater has the newest and greatest features. But if you are running an older version of NAV, we can definitely support it to a great degree. Okay, so let's just have a quick review of what these different packages do before we jump into the demo. The first one, shop floor data collection. So what this allows us to do is really record any activity that happens on the shop floor. So typically that's, production-related activities, or if you're using jobs, we can record time against jobs or production orders, but also non-productive time, such as cleanup, sweeping, any of those sorts of things, any rework time on a job or a production order, and any safety, incidents or anything like that. So really anything that happens on your shop floor, we can track within the system and report on. In addition to that, we have versions that do time and attendance as well. So now we can integrate with the payroll system. So the guys clock in the morning, clock out at the end of the day. We calculate overtime, shift premiums, any of those sorts of things that you need, and we send that off to your payroll system for calculation of deductions and everything else. And what that means really is from the time the guys scan their time in the shop till they get their pay stub, nobody's doing any data entry whatsoever. The information flows all the way through with various approval stages, and it saves a ton of time. So that one has a huge payback. It pays back very quickly. Huge ROI is what I should have said. And then in addition to the time capture, it also does consumption, output, quality, and a number of other things that you'd expect to be able to do on the shop floor in a barcoding environment. Okay. The mobile inventory management is what we're going to talk about in the first part of the demo. And what that is, it allows us to come in and really provide the guys on the shop with context around what they're doing. So it's more than just simple data acquisition. People think barcoding, they think, okay, I scan information into the system and that's what it does. What we try and do is also extend additional information out to the guys on the shop floor so they can make decisions out there without having to write things on the back of their hand and run back into the office and get it sorted out an hour after, you know, the activity occurred. Everything we do, including the shop floor data collection and the mobile WMS, is built into NAV. So it runs all the NAV business logic. It's in real time, all of those sorts of things. Okay, so it's tightly integrated with your current business logic, your current processes. So a little bit more on the mobile WMS. Really, we work with any NAV configuration, which means that if you have the advanced warehousing turned on, in other words, the directed pick and put away, we can work with that, or we can work with an environment that doesn't even have bins enabled. So if you're running a location, a warehouse that you don't even have bins, you're using the shelf number on the SKU or the item card, no problem. We can support that. So we can extend the benefits of barcoding out to really any environment. Okay, and then we add things like license plating if required, or we have an extensibility framework that allows you to graphically build up your business logic that executes on the scanner. Okay, and the last one I mentioned that's kind of a must-have for anybody that has any amount of inventory in their system is the count module. Integrates with the barcoding, of course, so it makes it very easy to do barcoded inventory counts. But just as importantly, if you can't jump into barcoding initially, physical inventory module allows you to do directed and non-directed counts, we call them, on paper, and it sort of fixes all the base NAV issues with inventory counting, and generally pays for itself, the first time you use it. All right, so that's a little bit of marketing stuff or sales stuff on our products. Let's talk about, if you're implementing barcoding, or if you're thinking about it, why would you do it? And the reason is, everybody deals with data in your environment, right? You've got inventory, POs, sales orders, all of that sort of thing. And really that information or that data is really could be a competitive advantage for you, right? Understanding what your stock levels are, all of those sorts of things, could really be helpful. But it has to be good data, it has to be timely, it has to be accurate. And that concept there, that your data, especially your inventory data, your shop data, can be a competitive advantage. That's really why you bought NAV in the first place, right? You bought NAV to provide you information to allow you to make good decisions. And that's why, BI is a big thing nowadays, is being able to extract that data and make decisions from it. Okay, so, but that data is useless. I can run whatever reports I want, but if it's out of date because I'm doing manual entry, or if it's wrong because the guys on the shop are recording the information incorrectly, that data is useless to me. I can turn it into information, but it's not going to help. So what we need to do, first step, is we need to improve that data capture so that we have timely and accurate data coming into the system. And of course, barcoding is the way to go. It's really the most accessible technology out there. It's been around for decades. So it's fairly commodity, all the hardware and everything else. And really anything that you do in your facility, you can record by scanning a barcode. So any activity, any physical activity or physical transaction that you do, you can verify by scanning a barcode. And what that does, of course, it provides you that real-time, and it's going to be more accurate because you're physically verifying that transaction with the scanner. All right, and there's lots of different options, hardware and software, for getting into barcoding, but it is very accessible. Now, we can go out and scan those barcodes, and as I mentioned before, that's really not enough. For the guys on the shop floor, if they're out there scanning barcodes and it says, you can't do this because I scanned an invalid barcode or something, that doesn't really help them. What we really need to do is push out information that you have in NAV out to the shop floor, right? Because today, if somebody has an issue with something they scan, maybe they can't find an item or something like that, they're going to write it down, they're going to run back into the office half an hour later, and somebody's going to try and sort it out because that information's in NAV. Why not present that to the guys on the shop floor and allow them to make the decisions right there when it makes sense? And what we do is we call that shop floor decision support. And so all of our products are sort of geared around empowering your guys on the shop floor, to whatever extent you feel they're capable of being empowered, but empowering the guys on the shop floor to make those decisions. And I'll give you some examples of that. So here's an example. I've got a scanner here, and I've got a PIC document loaded up on the scanner, and we'll actually see this in a live demo as well. A couple of things. Even that right there provides some advantages. I can get all that information on a piece of paper, but on a scanner, this shows me, everything that I need to do for that particular PIC document, right? All the information I need is there, so it gives me some context around the work effort for that PIC. But let's say I have an issue with one of those items, it's missing, I can't find it, that sort of thing. With decision support, I could, click and drill down into an item inquiry view, drill down into that, and do things like, look at the picture. Maybe I can't find it, so I look at what the picture looks like. Or I can look at recent transactions for that particular item. Or look at the details, which tells me which bin that particular item is in if I can't find it in the bin I was directed to. So that's providing that sort of context or that additional information to the guys on the shop floor where I can't find this item. Okay, well, what does it look like and which other bins might it be in, right? I've just saved a trip back into the office to figure that out. Okay, huge potential savings with that type of philosophy. Another example here is more on the manufacturing side. So if I'm in here and I'm doing production activities, here's a dispatch list. So instead of just waiting for the paper traveler to come to my station, I can actually see what's coming up, at my particular station or through the entire facility on a dispatch list. And, this is just a few production orders showing here. And then in addition to that, if I select one of those, I can get additional information, like maybe I need to see the bill of materials or the quality metrics that I need to capture for that, or, any work instructions or linked documents like assembly drawings and all that sort of thing. So again, we're providing that additional information to the guys on the shop floor so that they can make some of those decisions or find the additional information on their own without having to run back into the office. All right. Now, so barcoding is the way to go. Hopefully you're sold on the idea of shop floor decision support. So more than just simple data collection, we actually want to provide feedback to the guys out there, provide them additional context and additional information. So once you've got that, what you can do is decide on the software you want to run. So there's a few different options. In-house development, NAV ADCS, if you're doing, sort of warehouse management, framework add-ons and dedicated add-ons. Now, we generally get into this in a lot more detail if we're doing a longer session, but just to cover these off briefly, we've seen all of these in use. In-house development generally is going to cost you more than buying an add-on. And, initially it might seem like it's quick and easy to throw a, NAV web client out there and set it up for your specific situation. But over time, you end up spending a lot more money on in-house development than if you buy something off the shelf. Right? It's a typical buy versus build problem. ADCS, if you're running NAV 2013 or newer, you actually already own this. And you can get material barcoding set up in about 10 or 15 minutes by using this module in NAV. The challenge with that one is it only works with the directed PIC environment, so you have to turn on advanced warehousing to use it. And it's fairly limited in what it can actually do. It only does PICs, putaways, and a few other little things. But if you want to get sort of initial look into what barcoding could be, and you're on 2013 or newer, you can enable that and actually play with it right away. Then there's framework add-ons. So these are actually things where you can go and build your own application that runs on a mobile device and can do some basic warehousing stuff. Generally, they don't have a lot of depth. They're not going to really cover all the bases, but they're very similar to doing in-house development. And the final one is the one we're going to talk about, which is the dedicated add-ons. These things are built, purpose-built, to solve a specific problem, and you can normally pull them off the shelf, install them, and be up and running almost immediately. Okay, so let's talk about what you need to do to prepare for the project. So hardware and software selection, we'll talk about that in a sec, but software, obviously you want to select our software, but no, there are a few different packages out there, and you need to find the one that works best for you, and you'll see ours in a little bit. Determining your barcode strategy, figuring out how you're going to deploy it, getting your IT guys involved, that sort of thing. So I'll cover off a couple of those points. So hardware options. If you're in the warehouse, generally you want a dedicated handheld device, right? Those guys are, I wouldn't recommend running phones or tablets generally in a warehouse. In some situations, a tablet is okay, but you want one of those rugged devices that can get hit by a forklift and keep working. And so those are generally what you're going to use in the warehouse. In the shop, you're typically going to have a fixed terminal that uses a wedge scanner like this picture at the bottom there, to scan travelers and things like that. And if you have sales guys out there that are doing, vendor managed inventory counts and things like that, you might have a phone or a tablet. Okay, so that's kind of, you have to decide the hardware you want based on usage. Here's some pictures of a few options. Again, the rugged devices for the warehouse. For shop floor, thin clients or Chromebox or these little guys here, that middle picture, that Intel one, that's a stick PC, they're called. It's not that much bigger than a thumb drive. You plug it into the back of the monitor and you have a full PC. And they're great actually for shop environments because there's no moving parts or anything like that, so they get really dusty and they'll keep working. And then tablets and phones with built-in barcode scanners and things like that, for potentially light warehouse use or for outside sales guys and things like that. Okay, so those are some of the hardware options. On the barcoding strategy, a few things to consider. When are the items going to get labeled if you're talking about material barcoding, and what type of label are you going to use? So a common one is deciding between sort of a linear barcode like this. So if you're generating your own labels, linear barcode or a 2D barcode like the ones below it. The ones below it are usually what we recommend if you're doing your own labeling. They really are the future. So in a barcode that's about 1 inch square, I can fit up to maybe 60 characters in a barcode that size. So I can fit item number, lot number, expiration date, almost anything you like in a very, very small space. Okay, and they can shrink down to, a 1/4 inch across if you really want a really tiny barcode. Okay. The other thing I'll also mention when you're getting into this is IT engagement. You definitely want to get your IT guys engaged early, because they're going to be managing the devices, they're going to be putting them on the network, they're going to be setting up the network. So you want to get them engaged early and be nice to them, because they'll have a big impact on how smoothly the project goes. All right, so you've done all that, you've got your hardware, software, the IT guys are all in, you've got the network set up and everything else. You roll this thing out, what can you expect as a return on investment for these things? So a few individual cases here, but these are pretty broadly representative of what you can expect. So in the case of an inventory count, if you're going to barcoding just simply to count inventory and nothing else, that actually pays for itself as well. So an example, the first one, client used to take 5 days to count their warehouse, a lot of serialized items in it. So 20 people times 5 days, 100 man days roughly to do the count. They dropped that down to a single day using barcoding to do that count. So really they saved 80 man days worth of time. So the system paid for itself immediately first time they did an inventory count. Okay, and that's maybe a little on the higher end, but that's fairly typical. Often the inventory count pays for the system just alone. The other one that we normally get into is inventory accuracy. So when you think about it, if your inventory is 95% accurate and you're shipping, 5,000, or you're picking 5,000 items a day, 5%, that's a lot of errors. And if it's costing you, $5, $10, $15 per error for, wasted labor time or accidentally shipping the wrong thing and having to ship back, those types of things, that adds up. And these particular guys saved up to about $1,000 a day just by improving their inventory accuracy. Now 5,000 lines is a lot, so it's they're a larger warehouse, but really the system paid for itself within several months based on those savings. Okay. And then finally, one for the manufacturing guys, when you're doing shop floor data collection, so an example here, there were 5 branches, over 400 employees across the branches. At each branch, they had somebody doing data entry to enter those time cards every day, both for payroll and for job costing. That all disappeared. So they saved roughly, the equivalent of 3 full-time positions, and went down to a single payroll person to manage payroll for everybody. So hardware and software, the payback was less than 10 months on a project like that. And we see that regularly. The payback period is very quick. In fact, we have a little ROI calculator that we use, and we can provide to you that you can plug in. If you're doing production orders, you plug in all the details about your production orders, and it'll spit out your monthly projected savings. And even if you ignore, some of the things here like quality improvement and gains in market share, that it's an estimate, it's a little bit subjective. Even if you go with the just straight quantifiable benefits based on time savings, you can see that the payback period on these projects is very, very quick. All right. So that's it. I was blabbing a long time, but now let's jump directly into the presentation. So what I'm going to start with is the mobile warehouse software. And what you see on the screen here is actually the device I have in my hand. So it looks just like this. It's a DataLogic Falcon device, and we like the DataLogic Falcons, but we work with any brand or model out there. So if you have existing hardware like Motorola or Intermec or something, no problem. But this particular device, as I mentioned, I have it in my hand. So as I touch the screen and move it around, you'll see the screen update on your end. As I scan barcodes, you'll hear the beep, and you'll see things update on this particular screen. And what you see on the screen are all the different modules or all the different apps available in the system. Okay, so you can add your own apps as well. So you can see that at the bottom here, I can go in, and we have a graphical logic builder tool that you can build up your own logic and your own screens, and they just plug in as new apps on this menu. So if you have something custom, like you do, custom asset stuff or something like that, and you want to plug that in, no problem. You can do that yourself. You can plug it in, build your own apps, and extend the system. But the base product comes with the apps you see shown there. So the first one is inquiry. I can basically scan a barcode, and it tells me what it is. That's bin or item. The next one is the inventory count. That's the advanced inventory count, which we'll run through, and I'll give you a demo of. And again, whether you use the paper-based or the barcoded inventory count, that's really a must-have if you're carrying any amount of inventory, especially lot tracked or serial tracked inventory. The next one there is Scratchpad, and that allows you to do offline processing. So if your network goes down, or if you need to count inventory at a customer site, or a 3PL warehouse or something like that, you can scan everything offline, stores it on a device. When you're back on your own network, you can upload it and process it from within NAV. Okay, and what that means is everything else is real time. So everything else, we connect to the Wi-Fi network, and as I'm scanning things, it's retrieving that information directly from NAV. We're validating what the user is trying to do with your current NAV logic. So if you have customizations to control how you enter values and things like that in NAV, those will get executed by the handheld as well. Okay, so it's all integrated with NAV, and it's all real time. The license plating module is typically for more advanced environments where you're building up pallets or skids of items, and you can generate a single barcode to represent any number of items and lot numbers and serial numbers and things like that. And with that single barcode, I can move that around in the warehouse, I can ship it, I can consume it, I can do all of the various operations with a single barcode versus having to scan each individual item on that skid. The next one there is production, so we can do consumption and output. We extend the standard NAV consumption to, better track serial numbers and lot numbers compared to what base NAV does. And of course, we can do, as I mentioned, the output. So, if you're doing output in a sort of environment where you don't have fixed stations and things like that, we can capture the output from the handhelds as well. Receiving and shipping, fairly straightforward. Again, works with any location, so I can receive directly to a PO, or I can do a receipt to a warehouse receipt document if that's been configured. Similarly with shipping, I can ship a sales order or a transfer order, or I can ship a warehouse shipment document instead. Picks and putaways, same thing. If they're enabled in NAV, they'll be available on the screen, and we support inventory picks and warehouse picks, and we support inventory putaways and warehouse putaways, depending on how you've got NAV configured. And the last one there, the movement, allows us to do ad hoc movements, which means I scan, a from bin and a from item, and then I can scan where I'm going to put that item, and it'll do that movement for me automatically. So if you have guys on the shop floor that need to move things around, they can execute that from the handheld. And we can also do the movement worksheet where, NAV figures out what needs to be moved around. We send that to the handheld, and the people on the shop floor execute it. Okay. Now, what I'll do is I'll just jump in and I'll give you an example of what these various screens look like. So to start with, I'm going to jump into the pick document and just show you what picking looks like, and then we'll jump out and I'll show you some of the others. So I'm going to jump into picks. And from here, this allows me to either scan a pick document. So if you have a piece of paper that you present to the guys on the shop floor, so when there's something in their inbox, they know there's something to do, they can scan that document and load the pick on the handheld device. Or if you want to go more paperless, they can just hit that little lookup button. Incidentally, that was a little magnifying glass on the previous screen. And they could choose a document from the list. And you can add whatever columns you want here. That's just configuration and nav. And you'll notice there's an assignment one by default. So you can have it set up so that if I choose, one of these picks, it assigns it to me, and then, nobody else can work on that because it's assigned to me. So I'm going to grab this pick number 11 and load that up on the handheld. And what you see is actually everything that I'm supposed to pick on this particular document. Okay, so it shows me the item number, the bin, and again, assuming you have bins enabled. If you don't have bins enabled, you just wouldn't see this column on this document. And the quantity that I'm supposed to pick in unit of measure and everything else. And so the way it works is from here, the person on the shop floor is going to load this up, and they're just going to follow the directions that are on the scanner, right? These are the bins I need to go to. These are the items I need to pick. But in this particular case, I loaded this up. NAV says I have to go to this bin 0401 first because, that's where the product is, or that's the most optimal location to pick from first. But I happen to be standing in front of bin 0201. So what do I do about that? Well, all I have to do is scan the bin that I'm in front of to indicate where I am. So I scan that. The system, knows what bin I scanned. It highlights the first line that has that bin on it for informational purposes. And you'll notice I didn't have to go in and tell it, hey, I'm about to scan a bin, or choose a certain field and scan a bin. I just scan a barcode, and the system knows what I'm trying to do and reacts accordingly. So it makes it very simple on the guys on the shop floor. There's no screen tapping, none of that stuff. It's very simple. Now I've scanned the bin. Next thing I need to do is indicate which item I'm picking from that bin. So I'm going to scan that next. If I scan the wrong item or scan an item that's not on this pick with that bin, it'll yell at me. So I scan the item, and I don't know if you saw it flash on your screen. I have it set up to flash for a couple of seconds. It flashed a picture of the item that I scanned. So that provides us with a visual verification if you want to enable it. It's just a checkbox to enable or disable. That visual verification is really nice if you have temporary workers, or if you have, items with, similar item numbers or located close by or within the same bin that look differently. I can scan that, see a picture, verify that I'm actually picking the right product. So it can be useful. All right, at any rate, after the picture shows up, if you've got it turned on, I enter the quantity. And even here, we can configure this to behave, in a number of different ways. For example, I can set it up so it doesn't even prompt for quantity. So if I need to pick 4 of these items, that means I have to scan 4 times. Or I can have the default be the remaining quantity on that particular line. So all the user has to do is hit the, the enter key on the handheld to confirm the quantity. Or you can do what I've done here, which is I've got it set up to default to 0, and the picker actually has to specify the quantity he's taken. Okay, so there's lots of options you can set. So in this case, the picker is going to pick 2 of these guys. Okay, so I enter 2 pieces. And you'll notice it says, okay, we've taken 2, there's 2 outstanding. And incidentally, this updates NAV in real time. So this, if I go into the pick in NAV, this is being updated. But I couldn't find the other 2 in the bin, right? They just weren't there. So what do? Again, I can write it down on the back of my hand, wander into the office a little while later, and we try and sort it out. But in the spirit of shop floor decision support, I don't want to do that. I want to figure it out now because I'm busy picking this. So the first thing I want to do is notify somebody that there's a problem with this. So if I have one of these Falcon devices with a camera or a microphone on it, I could record a voice note or take a picture. That automatically gets attached into NAV and optionally notifies somebody that there's an issue. Or I can come in here and tap the menu button and choose an option from here. And I've got add note. But a number of the other ones that we can enable are things like flag this item for a cycle count, this item or this bin for a cycle count. So that means the next cycle count, because I noticed an issue at this bin, that cycle count will include this bin or that item on that cycle count. In this case, I'm going to tap the add note button, and I'm going to use a standard text code in NAV to say, you know, NH for not here, which, you know, it's just a NAV standard text code. It's abbreviation for not here. So not here, and it was the, you know, the LS 120 wasn't there. So I do that, and what I've done is I've actually sent that note to NAV. So if we go in here, we can see there's the note I just created. The warehouse supervisor can click on it, takes him to the pick, and you know, now knows that there was an issue with that particular document. So that's the first thing. I notified somebody that there's something wrong. Next thing I want to do is I still need to execute this pick. So what do? On mine, I can hit F8, shortcut key to drill down, but I'll just tap the screen here. So I tap the screen and I do item inquiry. And that launches that inquiry app that I talked about at the beginning. And that shows me for this particular item, everything about it. So where I can find it in the warehouse, these are these ones with 0 fixed bins where in theory they're empty. So I can see all the other bins where I could potentially find this item. I can look at recent transactions for that particular item. So maybe, you know, I just received something, somebody accidentally posted a put away or receipt for that item, but it's still sitting in the receiving bin. They actually haven't physically moved it. So maybe I can go to the receiving bin and find it. Right, those types of things. So I can look at recent transactions, or what some people do is they configure this to show supply and demand instead. So I see the quantity on sales order, quantity on purchase order, that sort of thing. And finally, if I just want to verify the picture, you know, maybe I can't find it in that bin, but if I know what it looks like, I can see, oh, it accidentally got put on the shelf beside there, and this is what it looks like, and I need to grab that. Okay, so again, we can drill down, find out information about this particular item. If I go back to details, I can see, okay, well, it wasn't in the bin that it was supposed to be in, but I see that it's in this bin 0502, so now I know where I can go and finish picking from. So now I can go to the bin 502 and pick from there instead. Okay. So again, now without the guy running into the office, he's able to notify people of problems, add it to the cycle count, figure out where he can also pick this item from, and continue on his merry way without really getting slowed down. Okay, and that dramatically improves the efficiency and the accuracy of your inventory. Okay. All right, and then once they're done picking, you know, the rest is the same. They scan the bin, they scan the item, optionally enter the quantity. Once they're done, we can register this pick, and then it's ready for shipping. Okay. Now, everything else in the system works very much the same way. So it sort of follows the NAV philosophy. All the screens are very similar looking, and they all work basically the same way. But I'll jump into receiving real quick just to show you what that looks like and mention something there. Similar idea, I can scan a receipt document, a barcode on a document if I have some out in the back of the warehouse, or I can do a lookup and find a document. So, you know, this is the Cronus NAV demo data, so the number series are a little messed up, but I know this 106025 is a PO. So I've got a packing slip with that PO number on it. I look it up, I bring it in. It'll load up, because I'm in a directed pick environment on this particular configuration, it loads up warehouse receipt number 12 and shows me everything I need to receive. Okay, so same basic idea. Now what I do is I pull an item out of the box and scan the barcode for it. And I just got to muddle through all my barcodes to find one. So let's say this LS2 here, I've got 67 remaining that I haven't counted yet on this particular receipt. So I'll scan that LS2. It finds that line, optionally shows me the picture, and I enter the quantity. So let's say 25 is what I just pulled out of this box. And you'll notice what it does is it just decrements that by 25 and increments this by 25, which means that I don't have to unpack everything, put it in a pile, count it, and then enter the quantity. I can just enter the quantity as I pull things out of the boxes. Now the other nice thing that we can do in here is, as I mentioned, if you've got a device that has a camera on it, so some of the Motorola's have it and the Falcons have it, Let's say I receive a damaged box. So I've got obvious damage to a pallet or a box that I've received. I can take a picture of that with this device. It'll automatically get attached into NAV and optionally notify somebody that, there's an issue. And by doing that, the receiver can start, basically the initial processes for a claim, for shipping claim, without moving an inch. So now he's got proof of damage. It's attached to NAV with that PO, and somebody's notified that they need to follow up on this, right? So immediately he's been able to start that process. And the other place we use that camera fairly often is on the shipping side. A lot of people take pictures of the truck once it's loaded to prove that everything was in good shape before it left the shipping dock. Okay. At any rate, that's the receiving. I can also drill down from here, do all those same things I did in picking. I can post the receipt from this device, which will post the NAV receipt directly, and away I go. On the license plating side, just to mention that, if you do build up pallets in your environment, I can create a new license plate, and as I'm receiving, I build up that pallet, and when I'm done, it generates a barcode label for that particular pallet, and then I start the next pallet. And then when I go to put away, I don't have to scan each individual item to put it away. I scan the pallet barcode, and I move that entire pallet as one. Okay. All right, last thing I'll show you on this before we jump into the manufacturing side is the inventory count. And this is a completely separate module within NAV as well, so again, with or without the handhelds. But what we do is we set up something called a count sheet. And you can set them up any number of ways you like. But let's say I happen to be team 4, right? So I'm part of team 4 doing the inventory count. So I'll load up that count sheet on my device. And when I load it up, you'll see that it starts out blank. So if I'm doing a full physical inventory count, this is how you would start, blank sheet. Okay. And you say, team 4, you go count everything in shelf W or wherever that is. You go over there and count everything you find. So what they do is they walk over to that area, they scan the first bin that they find, right? So I just scanned the bin, it's W0201. They scan the item that they found in that particular bin. Again, optionally shows the picture, but usually we turn that off for inventory counts because it gets annoying actually. And then I enter the quantity I found for that particular item, and I'm done. And then the next step is, okay, so there's a setting that can forget the bin that you're at, and that can be per user or per device, so that they're forced to scan the bin each time. So I scan the next bin that I'm in front of, and in this case I found a serialized item, so I scan that, and because it's serialized, you notice it doesn't actually prompt me for a quantity or anything. It knows it's a serialized item, and it just sets the quantity 1, logs the serial number, and the same thing goes for any lot tracked items. So if I find a lot tracked item, I can scan that. I can just scan the lot number, or I can scan a barcode that has the item number and the lot number in it, enter the quantity that I found for that particular lot number, and it captures the lot number as well. And the nice thing is, if you do have lot number or serial number tracking enabled, the system will actually reconcile by that. So when I go in and I run my difference analysis reports, it'll tell me which lot numbers I didn't count, or which ones I counted extra, or which ones were short. Same thing with serial numbers, which base nav doesn't even come close to. And then when I post it, it'll automatically post those adjustments to the lot and serial numbers. But from a shop floor perspective, that's how they do the count. It's scan bin, scan item, optionally enter quantity, next bin, next item. And that's why you can get from taking 5 days to do an inventory count down to a single day. Okay. Now normally I would ask for questions at this point, but I'll just continue to run through and do a little bit on the manufacturing side, and then we can come back to any questions you may have on the warehouse side once we're done everything. All right. So on the manufacturing side, again, we can do some of that through this type of device running on a tablet or a rugged screen for consumption and output. But the tool we would typically use, assuming you don't want a mobile device, is our time collection module. And this runs in a web browser, so it does run on a tablet or on a touch screen computer out there. Often people just put a monitor with a Chrome box or one of those stick PCs on it and fire up the web browser, and you're off to the races. And what this allows me to do is we generate an ID badge for the employees. So this is just a barcode that you can stick on an existing badge, or NAV has a report that generates a nice pretty badge for the employees. That can include pictures and everything else. But an employee, what they will do is they will scan their badge to unlock the terminal. Okay, so when I scan my badge, it basically unlocks the terminal, tells me who it is, and shows me, in this particular case, by default, the time card for this person. Okay. The other option is, as you saw in one of the screenshots in the presentation, is it could also show me a dispatch list. And the dispatch list shows me everything that's coming up in my particular area, okay, for work. But if we go back to the time card, the time card, again, is every activity that I've recorded for myself in the day. So if I'm, doing standard production activities, I would unlock the terminal, and then I would scan my my barcoded shop traveler to indicate what I'm about to work on. So in this case, I'll scan that single barcode, and there's one barcode for setup, one barcode for runtime. So I scan the barcode for runtime. Single barcode scan tells me which operation I'm working on, which production order I'm working on, the line number, all of that details. So very simple for the people on the shop floor to manage. Scan my badge, scan the barcode, and now I walk away. I walk away and I complete this work. Okay, so and after 30 seconds or so, the terminal locks, or I can scan my badge again to lock the terminal. I do my work. I come back. I unlock the terminal. And then I simply scan the next activity that I'm going to be working on. So, let's do this one. And what it does is it automatically calculates the time that I spent on the previous activity, and the unit of measure you can set up to be minutes or hours or days or whatever you like. It automatically calculates that time and starts me on my next activity. Okay. And that's it. For time collection, that's as simple as it is. There's a lot of other things we can do. We can have people log on to multiple production orders simultaneously. We can do batching. So if you've got, say, laser cutting or painting or a dip tank or something like that, where you're doing multiple production orders at the same time, we can manage that batching and split the time proportionally. We can capture rework time. So for example, let's say I'm doing this particular operation, but I'm having to redo the work because, let's say the sales guys sold the wrong thing. Oh, actually, sorry, that's equipment. I had an equipment failure. So what I do is I scan this and I indicate that the root cause was an equipment failure. And what that allows me to do now is I can report, weekly or monthly or whatever you like, on where the extra time in my shop is going to, right? Why is it taking me an extra 2 hours per operation to complete this? Well, equipment keeps failing, or engineering keeps sending the wrong drawings, or Joe down in welding keeps screwing up and I have to redo it. So you can track all that and then report on where you're actually losing that money, okay, without really any additional effort to the guys on the shop floor. Now, beyond just the time capture, you'll notice over here we've got the bill of materials, we've got quality measures, work instructions that we can show to the guys, and any document links associated with that. So assembly drawings or jig setup or any of those sorts of things we can show here, along with if you want to show the item picture or any tooling you need, we can make those visible as well. All right, and this is more than just a display. We can actually record consumption, if we like, on these production orders. So as an example, I can come in here and I can actually enter the quantities at the point of use for consumption, and if any of these were lot or serial tracked, I can enter the lot numbers and serial numbers for that consumption as well. So that's especially useful if you do have people that need to record serial numbers or lot numbers that they're using. As they pull them out of the bin for production, they can record it right there as they're doing the work. Similarly with output, you can enter the output and scrap and everything right on the line itself, or you can go in and tap that if you're on a touch screen or use the mouse and keyboard. And I can enter, if the requirement is to enter the serial numbers I'm completing instead of having NAV auto-generate them, I can enter serial numbers and lot numbers as I'm actually performing this production activity. And it gives me the history of previous output and everything else. All right. So a lot more than just capturing time. We can record consumption, output. We can also record quality measures. So if you have tests that you need to perform at a specific operation like ID, OD, length, any of that sort of thing, pass, fail, any of that type of test setup, we can actually enter that and record those results from the shop floor. Okay, and then all of this again integrates with NAV. So, once people have put this in, there's an approval screen in NAV that they would go into, and it's all exception based. So we'll show them all the time cards that have problems. They correct, if you have 10 people reporting to you, you'll see 10 time cards, and somebody else in another part of the shop might see 20 time cards for the 20 people reporting to him. And then anything that's flagged as an exception, like it's basically nice, big, bold, red, they'll figure those out, they'll fix those, and then just approve it. So if you have 10 people reporting to you, it's maybe 5 minutes to do the time card approvals every day, and then that goes into NAV on the production orders or jobs or fixed assets or non-productive time. So I didn't show that actually, but we can actually capture time against all of those things, including service orders as well. So if you're running service, but if I want to do asset maintenance, I can track time against asset maintenance or inspections. And if I want to track time against non-productive time, like somebody's doing cleanup, or they went home sick, or whatever, I can capture that time as well on the shop floor. Okay. All right. And the end result of this is the ability really to do some fairly nice reporting. So we have Jet Express reports, so there's no cost for that version of Jet, so you can run all these reports from there. So things like productivity analysis. So because we're able to track, what percentage was against production orders or jobs, and what time was against cleanup or breaks or toolbox meetings, we can actually calculate productivity and show all of that. We can look at the time spent based on the activity type. So was it rework? And then again, you can reclassify this rework as, with a specific root cause code. So I can find out exactly where all my rework time went to, right? So we can report on all of these sorts of things. And then if you have the payroll integration, we can see exactly, how many hours of regular time versus overtime versus whatever codes you have set up in your system. Okay, so all of that is possible simply by guys scanning a couple of barcodes when they're doing their work in the shop floor. So for the guys on the shop floor, it's actually even easier than having to pull out paper time card and write it on there, or writing it on the traveler or anything else. They simply scan barcodes, and you get magically all of this type of information back in your system to report on. Okay. All right. So that was a lot of talking, and we covered a lot of ground there. We didn't touch on a lot of the capabilities in the system, but hopefully that gives a pretty good overview of, first of all, why you'd want to do barcoding, and then also some of the tools available for doing that barcoding in your environment. So at this point, if there are any questions, we've got just under 10 minutes left. We'll open it up for any questions, and otherwise, thanks everybody for attending, and hopefully it was a valuable session for you.
All right. Thanks, Mark, for presenting the webinar. The webinar was filled with a lot of great information about NAV barcoding, and I have to personally say that it's one of the, or not one of the, it's actually the best best software that I've used for barcoding. So all you manufacturers need to take a look at this.
Exactly.
Let me switch presenter real quick. All right, if anyone has any questions, my contact info is on the screen. I think you can see it now. All right, you can call, email me, or even get a hold of me through social media. I and Solution Systems will do our best to answer any of your questions. If we cannot answer your question, we will get in touch with Mark and definitely get you an answer. So once again, Mark, appreciate it. Thanks so much. It was a wonderful webinar, and we'll be in touch.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.